transcribed message which you are about to hear represents a desperate and consecrated determination on the part of fearless patriots to reach you with truth which is being scientifically censored out of our daily papers, out of our radio programs, and out of our television broadcasts. This message would constitute a waste of effort and money if it contained truth which you could pick up at any newsstand or hear from day to day in the radio and television broadcasts. Shortly before these words were recorded, there was placed in my hand a report from a great citizen of intelligence and character. Time will not permit me to read you the full report, but I will read enough of it to challenge your attention, unless, of course, you have been completely drugged and rendered insensible by the hypnotism of our controlled propaganda machine. I'm not giving the name of the important citizen who made this report, which I am about to quote, because I do not care to bring down upon his head unnecessary persecution. Here is a portion of his written report. I quote, 10 years more, that's about all. 15, maybe, at the outside. By then, the Reds will have taken over America. No war, no hydrogen bombs, no mass slaughter, till after the victory has been won. The coup d'etat in course of accomplishment, even while you and I are reading these lines, will be engineered to final success by the entrenched and untouchable traitors. Traitors in high places, aided and abetted by their strategically placed cohorts in the nerve centers of our nation. I continue to quote from the report. The men who sold 500 million Chinese into communist slavery will finally betray America. The saboteurs who ordered ignominious defeat in Korea will at last achieve the utter destruction of the nation that has too long stood between Russia's communist leaders and a bloody communist world. It will be the fulfillment of the prophecy made by Nikolai Lenin in 1923, when he said, first, we will take Eastern Europe, then the masses of Asia, then we will encircle the United States, which will be the last bastion of capitalism. We will not have to attack. It will fall like overripe fruit into our hands. End the quotation of Lenin. I now resume the quotation from the confidential report. Who are these traitors? In what key spots are they located right now? Apparently we are not to know until it is too late. It is worse than useless. It is military or political suicide for any individual to attempt to track them down, for the end is ever the same. Character assassination, disgrace, or even death. That ends the quotation of the confidential report. A sincere Christian patriot must do one of two things with this statement. First, he can dismiss it as untrue, but I tell you that in my files and in the files of the Christian Nationalist Crusade, of which I am the national director, we have the evidence. Evidence to support the apprehensions contained in this quoted report. Therefore, no patriot who has heard this warning can claim to be sincere until he has gone to the bottom of this question. The second treatment that can be given to this warning is to believe it and to act on it. The Christian Nationalist Crusade, which is a national committee, functions on the following premises. First, that this is a constitutional republic which has grown out of the teachings and the ideals of Christian civilization. Second, that the enemies of Christ and our way of life have organized a worldwide conspiracy and a worldwide plot to destroy this constitutional republic and all Christian civilization. Third, It is our duty as patriots to enlighten ourselves and band ourselves together in a devoted and consecrated effort to save America from this conspiracy. Fourth, in doing this, we must be enlightened concerning the true tradition of Americanism. We must become informed as to the techniques being employed to destroy us, and we must familiarize ourselves with the names of the organizations and the personalities engaged in this satanic, destructive, diabolical effort. Fifth, based on this information, we must act with intelligence, strength, courage, and Christian faith. I am sorry to tell you something. It grieves me to tell you that expensive organizations have been formed, newspapers have been subdued, propaganda agencies have been captured, which are now in the daily 24-hour business of undermining every one of the great features of our constitutional republic. Behind this conspiracy to destroy our republic is the same evil, Christ-hating political machine which brought about the Russian Revolution, which lowered the Iron Curtain over the eastern half of Europe, and which has enveloped 500 million additional human beings in Asia with the savage tyranny of death, torture, and enslavement. In the light of the natural decency of the American people, the world conspirators know that crude methods cannot be employed effectively in the United States. Therefore, the old simile applies. We are being destroyed by wolves in sheep's clothing. They have crept into our schools. They are in our colleges. They are in our pulpits. They have taken over cultural organizations, political parties, newspapers, broadcasting facilities, television stations. Many people who are doing the work of destruction are not communists. In fact, they think they are opposed to communism. They are serving as the innocent tools of the most ruthless conspiracy of destruction ever plotted against a civilized people. The study of this conspiracy is as complex as the study of geology or cancer. America has spent millions and billions in the study of the constructive sciences involving medicine, public health, highways, mineralogy, transportation, finance. But there are only a few of us who have given our whole lives to the study of the conspiracy against our Christian American way of life. Since so few people are scientifically and thoroughly informed, it makes it difficult for us to get our message over. Powerful manipulators, operating from behind the scenes in their ruthless determination to keep this truth from the people, have vowed that anyone of influence and character who dares lift a voice to warn the people shall be struck down with smear, ridicule, persecution, character assassination, imprisonment, or even death. I will list a few great citizens who have warned the people and have been struck down or impaired by the ruthless weapons of abuse. They include Charles A. Lindbergh, Reverend Charles Coughlin, Congressman Martin Dives, Congressman John E. Rankin, Congressman Parnell Thomas, Senator Jack B. Tenney, Senator Joseph McCarthy, General Douglas MacArthur, the late Senator Pat McCarran, and of course, no man in America has been ridiculed and smeared more than the one to whom you are now listening. Here are some unmistakable symptoms of treason which have not been satisfactorily explained to the American people. I defy any person posing as an intelligent American citizen to ignore what I am about to tell you. 5 generals and admirals testified before the Internal Security Committee of the United States Senate that they were ordered to take steps leading to defeat in Korea, contrary to their best judgment, contrary to their personal desires, contrary even to military and naval intelligence at hand. Senator McCarthy was struck down and the files were ordered closed just as he was about to obtain information concerning the mysterious orders that went out from Washington to these 5 generals and admirals. Among those who testified to the effect that they were virtually ordered to lose a war for America in favor of communism were the following: General Douglas MacArthur so testified, General James Van Fleet so testified, Admiral Charles Turner Joy so testified, General Mark Clark so testified, and General George Stratemeyer so testified. During my most recent visit to Washington, D.C., I was told by a person of unimpeachable character and unquestioned wisdom that the Congress of the United States has been so terrorized because of what has been done to Senator McCarthy that they are now afraid for their lives, their reputations, and their political futures if they were to take any further steps to uncover the treasonable orders that went out of Washington, D.C. to these generals and admirals who knew how to win a war and were not permitted so to do. Reference to our defeat in Korea is not intended to create the impression of thoroughness in the exposition of this subject. I give it merely to illustrate how deadly and powerful the conspiracy is. It stands to reason. If hidden hand forces in and near our government in Washington are powerful enough to force generals and admirals to act against their best judgment in the prosecution of the war, then the time has come for the American people to know who these unseen, hidden hand, powerful personalities are. Senator McCarthy and Senator Jenner got closer, to use the figure, they got closer to pay dirt and closer to the real information than anyone thus far. But what happened to them? Bureaucrats in Washington with authority to act have threatened government employees with prison if they dare turn any of this material over to Senator McCarthy, Senator Jenner, or anyone in a position of similar authority and interest. The time has come for me to raise this question: who is behind this hidden hand, communist, Christ-hating, world revolution and conspiracy? What individuals, what organizations are feeding this plot with money, with ideas, with leadership? You are about to hear truth which could cost me my liberty. Yes, it could cost me my life. But I must speak it, and here it is. When the Christ-hating savages of communist leadership had burned the churches, slaughtered the police, and overthrown the government of Russia, 300 commissars came to power. Of these 300 commissars whose hands were dripping with blood, I must tell you this, of these 300 commissars whose hands were dripping with blood, 290 were 3 years following the October Revolution, which outlawed the church, crucified the Christians, America's most influential periodical, known as the American Hebrew, published in New York City, said on its editorial page, I quote, "Remember, I am quoting from the most influential periodical in the United States. Here it is. The Bolshevist revolution in Russia was the work of brains, satisfaction, of planning, whose goal is to create a new order in the world. What was performed in so excellent a way in Russia, thanks to brains and because of dissatisfaction and by planning, shall also, through the same mental and physical forces, become a reality all over the world. End the quotation taken from America's most influential journal, the American Hebrew. Some years later, the most powerful Jew in America was interviewed. His name was frequently referred to as the King of Jews. When questioned concerning communism, said, quote, "Some refer to it as communism, but to me, it is," the quotation. These two quotations cannot be denied successfully, and who can pose as a student of world revolution, and who can warn the American people concerning the threat against our nation without taking these quotations very, very seriously? In other words, what is the organized official attempting to do on a worldwide basis? I can only judge these organizations by the conduct of their auxiliaries, which are functioning in the United States of America and in the nations of the world. And concerning these functions, I must tell you this: we have reliable information. Colonel John Beatty was one of the top men in the Department of Military Intelligence during World War II. Following the war, he retired as a military officer and took up his duties as a university professor. In fact, he was a university professor before he went into the government service as a military intelligence expert. He is now the head of the English department of Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. This is indeed one of the important universities of the world. During the war years, Colonel Beatty was able to observe subversive activities scientifically and thoroughly. His conscience would not permit him to rest until he had summarized his discoveries in a book entitled The Iron Curtain Over America. Colonel Beatty did the most courageous writing job ever to be done by a modern man of letters. He produced a thorough, handsome, self-documented, cloth-bound book which establishes beyond any doubt that Jews who have migrated to the United States have seized control of many of our political, cultural, labor, and religious organizations, and unless their plot is hindered and checked and overcome, they will fulfill the warning which I quoted in the beginning of the address. They will lower an iron curtain over America. General George Stratemeyer, referred to earlier in this address, who was in full charge of the Air Force during the Korean War, and who was a close friend of General Douglas MacArthur, came into possession of Colonel Beatty's great book, and after reading it, he wrote Colonel Beatty as follows. I am not quoting the full letter, but I am quoting 2 or 3 very important paragraphs. I quote General George Stratemeyer. Recently, I was called before the United States Senate Internal Security Committee, which came to Orlando, Florida, to hear my testimony. During the hearing, I asked many questions to which I did not know the answers. A gentleman who read most of the transcript in the September 3rd issue of the United States News and World Report sent me a copy of your great book, The Iron Curtain Over America, which he said would answer my questions. I want to tell you, Colonel Beatty, that your book did answer my questions. Of course, I have spent all my life in the service, and it's hard to believe that we had and have such traitors in our country, and who still go scot-free. End the quotation, taken from the letter written by General George Stratemeyer to Colonel John Beatty. What is the deadly truth which General Stratemeyer found in Colonel Beatty's book? And why are these powerful organizations so determined that this truth shall not reach our people? I have no desire to be melodramatic, but I owe it to the listener to give him some samples of the desperation in the minds of those who are determined that this truth shall not reach you and others. Less than 10 days before this address was prepared, I received a letter through the mail, which is only a sample of many I have received. It reads in part as follows. I quote from this anonymous letter. Gerald Smith, you have less than 30 days to live. We will wash the United States with your blood. We will get you when you least expect it. End the quotation. True enough, it is logical to conclude that it was written by a crackpot, a neurotic. But how much worse is the statement that I have just quoted than the one I am about to quote, which was taken from the Sentinel in Chicago, which indeed is the largest English-language newspaper in America. The statement I am about to quote was written on the editorial page by the editor of the Sentinel a few days after Mrs. Smith and members of my staff and myself barely escaped mob murder by a Chicago gang after I had addressed a packed auditorium of patriots in the West End Women's Club of Chicago. Here is what Mr. Sentinel of Chicago said. I quote, "We intend to make it impossible for Gerald L.K. Smith or any of his ilk to meet in public places anywhere in Chicago. Let them spew their filth in sewers, in dungeons, in underground basements, not where decent people gather." End the quotation from the Chicago Sentinel. The largest newspaper west of Chicago is known as the California Voice, which is edited by one Samuel Gatch. It carries a feature column each week out of Washington, D.C. Among other things, this column recently contained the following words. I quote from the California Jewish Voice. Although the agencies have spent years and millions of dollars to destroy Gerald L.K. Smith, he and his henchmen now emerge stronger than ever. Smith has never been in a more powerful position as he rides on the crest of his anti-communist crusade. End the quotation from the California Voice. Dear friend, what strange repeal of American tradition permits any group of individuals, regardless of their political viewpoints, to boast that they are planning the destruction of an American citizen and raising money so to do. Some time back I was shocked when handed the Sunday morning edition of the St. Louis Globe-Democrat, the largest daily newspaper in the state of Missouri. As most listeners know, that paper is the only morning daily paper in St. Louis. It carried a story which in part read as follows, believe it or not. The beginning of the story revealed that a meeting had been held in St. Louis, and then the story continued. I quote, "A New Year's resolution was passed by the group at the meeting to wish and pray for the death of Gerald L.K. Smith. One member of the group said that gangsters should be paid to bump him off. The same individual asked the group to donate funds to pay for Smith's death performed in any manner." End the quotation. These dramatic citations have been made not for the purpose of imposing my personality upon you, the respectful listener, but to give you, through my personal experience, some understanding as to why it has been so difficult for some of us to get truth to you and other sincere Americans. Your first thought is to say, but why haven't we been told these things? The reason is simple. You have depended upon the newspapers, the radio, the television. These are controlled and largely influenced by British ownership and British advertisers. We must admit this reality. Certain British organizations of great power confessed in their annual reports 3 years ago that they had raised over $6 million with which to oppose and fight such people as Gerald L.K. Smith and others. That's why the American people are puzzled. They hear much about the what of communism and the nature of communism and the program of communism, but most of our public figures are afraid, yes, they are actually afraid, to tell the people about the who of communism. Well, has the Scripture said, quote, by their fruits ye shall know them, end quote. It is only natural that the innocent American should say, Mr. Smith, do you believe that all are pro-communist? As I said earlier in this address, we must judge the manipulations and the programs and the desires of the by what their national and international organizations stand for officially. In dealing with this, I shall personify my logic by giving you the names of important patriots who have been opposed and fought and smeared by important organizations. Yes, not only important organizations, but all important organizations. Here are a few of the outstanding patriots they have sought to destroy. Charles A. Lindbergh, General Douglas MacArthur, Henry Ford Sr., Congressman Martin Dies, Congressman John Rankin, Colonel Robert McCormick, Reverend Charles Coughlin, the late Senator Pat McCarran, Senator Joseph McCarthy, Senator William Jenner, Senator John Bricker, Senator Jack B. Tenney, and many others of similar patriotic stature. We dare not overlook the fact that every important British organization in the world has fought the McCarran-Walter Immigration Act, which was intended and is still intended to save and protect our country against invasion by undesirable aliens. Every important organization has fought the Bricker Amendment, designed to protect our national sovereignty. Every important organization has fought every attempt to pass laws requiring loyalty oaths on the part of public officials and people who are being paid out of taxpayers' money. Every important organization has fought any attempt to expose the danger of Russian world policy, and they have favored the appeasement policy, which lost the Korean War and promoted the Geneva Conference, which allowed 500 men to be lowered behind the bamboo curtain of communist tyranny. Speaking of the policy of coexistence introduced at Geneva in 1955, at which time our president and his compatriots fraternized with butchers and savages, and speaking of that policy of coexistence, I quote for you a statement that was made 24 years ago by speaking at the Lenin School of Political Warfare in Moscow. He said, and I quote, "War to the hilt between communism and capitalism is inevitable. Today, of course, we are not strong enough to attack. Our time will come in 20 or 30 years. To win, we will need the element of surprise. The bourgeoisie will have to be put to sleep, So we shall begin by launching the most spectacular peace movement on record. There will be electrifying overtures and unheard of concessions. The capitalistic countries, stupid and decadent, will rejoice to cooperate in their own destruction. They will leap at another chance to befriend. And as soon as their guard is down, we shall smash them with our clenched fists. End the quotation. It is well for us to remember that this is the same N.E.W.S who presided over the United Nations Security Council as late as 1949 in New York City. Any logical listener knows that I have not had time in this address to complete thoughts and to cite authorities. The purpose of this transcription is to get over to people warnings that otherwise they might never hear. On the assumption that after your attention has been arrested by these brief statements, you will consider it a patriotic duty as a Christian American to increase your enlightenment concerning these matters. We want you to know that the Christian Nationalist Crusade is not a movement born of a negative spirit. It is a nationwide movement dedicated to the high principle that politics plus faith equals patriotism, and patriotism plus Christ equals statesmanship. 15 years ago, a little handful of patriots gathered and approved 10 high principles. These are the 10 high principles on which this movement is founded, and they are as follows. 1. Preserve America as a Christian nation, being conscious of the fact that there is a highly organized campaign to substitute for Christian tradition. 2. Expose, fight, and outlaw communism. 3. Safeguard American liberty against the menace of bureaucratic fascism. 4. Maintain a government set up by the majority, which abuses no minority and is abused by no minority. Fight all attempts being made to force 5. Protect and earmark our own national resources for our own citizenry. 6. Maintain the George Washington foreign policy of friendship with all nations, trade with all nations, entangling alliances with none. 7. Oppose a world government and a superstate. 8. Prove that the worker, the farmer, the businessman, the veteran, the unemployed, the aged, and the infirm can enjoy more abundance under the true traditional American system than under any alien system that may be proposed by foreign propagandists. 9. Stop in order that American jobs and American houses may be safeguarded for American citizens. 10. Enforce the Constitution as it pertains to our monetary system. I realize fully that in this brief address there can be no complete thoroughness. What has been so said that it might awaken the listener to a deeper concern and a sharper alert.